Okay, I think I will start. Okay, so please let me share my screen. Alex, thank you. Okay, thank you all joining this APSCE webinar 2021. So this webinar is STEM education in K-12 and from an international perspective. So this webinar, I think, is the second one from APSCE. We are promoting STEM education in K-12. And today we are going to discuss about some major practices, existing challenges, and future plans for the STEM education in K-12. So I hope that you can find this webinar successful. I'm the chair, and we have the first speaker from Florence, and then followed by Morris, Xu Tingjia, and Timothy, and finally I'll share my talk, and then we shall open the panel for 80 minutes for discussion. Now I pass my time to Florence. Florence, please.
Okay, I'd like to share my screen. I don't think I have that capability right now. So someone can give me that capability, then I can share my screen. There we go. Okay, wonderful. All right, so I want to start tonight in the US and tomorrow morning in Asia by thanking Professor Kong from the Education University of Hong Kong for inviting me to take part in this webinar. And I'd also like to thank the Asia Pacific Society for Computers in Education for hosting it. So today I'm going to make a presentation on the work that we're doing on developing computational thinking assessments from a funds of knowledge approach. This work is unfolding in the context of a research practice partnership taking place between the University of Massachusetts at Amherst and the Springfield Public Schools. The RPP is currently working at the elementary grade level, which is kindergarten through 5th grade in the United States. Before I begin my talk, I want to provide a little bit of context for our work. As many colleagues in Asia may know, the United States has historically engaged in oppression and discrimination of Black people. This discrimination is deeply embedded in governmental practices and policies, including those that unfold within public schools. At the same time, there are many educators, both Black and white, who are very deeply interested in undoing this discrimination and combating these policies and practices that systematically discriminate against Black people. Our work unfolds within that context. So the research that I want to present today addresses the problem of subjective equivalence. Subjective equivalence in traditional assessment refers to the idea that all students or all people will interpret a test item in the same way. However, we know this is not true. We know that students who share the background of the test maker will have an advantage in interpreting the test item, whereas students who do not share the background of the test maker will be disadvantaged, and the assessment will not be able to uncover what those students know and can do in relationship to the content area, in this case, computational thinking. Therefore, we believe that there's a more equitable approach to developing assessment, and that approach that we'd like to talk about today is a funds of knowledge approach, and we consider it an asset-based approach. So asset-based approaches value every community. They believe that curriculum should build upon the strengths of the family and the students. An asset-based perspective understands that cultural diversity is a positive element in teaching and learning environments, and it argues that people should be valued for what they bring to the classroom. We view these ideas as key to this project and to the project of creating equitable assessments. So what is the funds of knowledge approach? Funds of knowledge is a term that refers to the fact that children's first teachers are their parents and their guardians. In other words, children are always learning at home. They're learning in their environment. They're learning in their community. And every family has rich resources with which they provide the children knowledge, experience, understanding. Now, in terms of computational thinking, what might some of those funds of knowledge be? Well, it could be scheduling, it could be routines, it could be organization of the household. Also with computational thinking in this day and age, of course, there are all manner of computational devices that exist within the home, including smartphones, laptops, tablets, remote controls, etc. So at home, children are experiencing plugged and unplugged aspects of computational thinking just by virtue of being a member of their particular family. So our research, we're seeking to understand how these computational thinking funds of knowledge that children develop as members of their household can be leveraged into assessments that help teachers understand what those children already know and can do. So we're using the Massachusetts state frameworks for digital learning and computer science to help us do this work. And the computational thinking construct within those frameworks focuses on abstraction, algorithms, data, programming and development, and modeling and simulation. All right, so we're developing an assessment tool by collecting data, analyzing that data, and then creating the assessment. Well, what kind of data are we collecting? What we did is we worked in the context of a first grade classroom last year to collect data. We did an interview with the teacher. We had a research assistant who visited the classroom for 4 months, twice a week, and gathered basic field notes in the classroom, including informal interactions and discussions with the first grade students. The research assistant also gathered significant circle drawings, and these are drawings that children are asked to do where they will focus on something that's significant in their life. And then finally, the most important aspect were interviews with the families of the children in the classroom. We had originally planned to interview 7 families, the mother, father, and child, or if it's not always a mother, father, sometimes a grandparent, whoever happens to be the guardian in that home. We were meant to interview 7 families, and we were going to do 14 interviews. We got cut short because of the pandemic, and so we were able to collect 3 interviews with 2 families last year. So we have collected these data. We have a framework for thinking about the data. And from this, we started to develop vignettes that we felt lent themselves to deeper analysis. So there were 26 vignettes that we identified that in which we could start to see some sort of computational thinking embedded in the conversation or in the significant circle drawing, etc. So let me give you an example of what I'm talking about here. So in one of the interviews, the father is a bus driver. And so that came out and that was discussed in the interview. And the daughter, the first grader, was in the interview session, talked about her father as a bus driver. The father talked about himself as a bus driver. In a separate interview with a different family, the mother in that interview talked about dropping her children off at school, and she mentioned the fact that the children took the bus on the way home. And finally, through our observations in the classroom, we were able to notice that the children in the first grade, when they were lining up for release, could always see the bus routines. They could see the bus arriving, kids getting on the bus, kids leaving. So this idea of the bus was one that we picked up for further analysis because we understood that there's some CT connections here. There's connection to data, there's connections to algorithmic thinking, and there's connections to conditional reasoning. Let me show you an example of the game that we developed that'll help hopefully make this connection a bit clearer. So here is the assessment game that was developed. This is called the bus game. And the objective of the game is to get all the characters to school as fast as can be done. So the grids here have been laid out on the map to help the player come up with the shortest bus path possible. For example, one grid is 1 unit of distance. A variety of characters have been provided on the left hand here, elderly people, children, etc. And the idea is to see how having various people needing the ride, how this affects decision making on the part of the children. So to make the game friendly, we've also included landmarks from the town of Springfield so that which children will recognize, for example, the Dr. Seuss Museum, the Basketball Hall of Fame, and Forest Park Zoo. So there are 2 modes in which this game can be played. The first mode is the normal mode, and players must make a bus route that picks up all the players and drops them at the school. For this, the players can either draw the path or drag the bus around. Once a character is picked up, they may be placed on a seat on the right-hand side of the screen. This represents the inside of the bus. In this game mode, only 1 bus trip is necessary. All characters should be picked up and then driven all together to the school. Players should be encouraged to come up with the shortest route they can. This mode of the game is meant to be a friendly introduction to graph traversal and shortest path. The second mode is the limited seating mode. This game mode has the same rules as the normal mode, but with multiple trips. Here, the bus will only have a limited number of seats available. Thus, the player will not be able to pick up all the characters at once. More than 1 trip to the school will be necessary to get the characters to their destination. Besides trying to come up with an efficient route, players must also consider which characters to prioritize and pick up first. This mode is related to the concepts of scheduling, limited capacities, and priority queues. All right, so the child will play this game with the teacher. So this is meant for a first grader to sit with the teacher, and the teacher would ask the child questions. For example, the teacher might observe the child picking up the older couple first. And so she would ask, why did you decide to get the older couple first? And the child would might respond, since they're older, they don't have to stand and wait as long if I pick them up first. So how can we think about that in terms of computational thinking? Well, the child has worked with some data by looking at and noticing that there is an older couple and some younger people. That's data, the age data. And based on that age data, the child made a decision. And the decision was to pick the older people up first so that they wouldn't have to stand as long. We recognize that as conditional reasoning. So this is work in progress. So far, we've created 4 digital tasks, games that can be played between the teacher and the first grader. And the teacher will have a set of questions that they can ask to reveal and find out more about the computational thinking and the range of ideas that a child has engaged with and can demonstrate. So this is a work in progress. Again, we have 4 digital tasks developed. We are going to hopefully be able to do some data collection once we're able to get back into the classroom. It's been a year that we've not been allowed into classrooms due to pandemic, but we're hoping to get back into them towards the end of this year to do some actual data collection. I wanted to just thank the research team, Daryl Ernest, Jennifer Randall, Sandra Bota, Nina Tota, and Rick Adrian. And then the actual digital tasks were created by grad students in the computer science department here at UMass, Alexander Camaro, Tessa Massas, Gabriel Brookman, Shishira Mysore, and Ishita Dasgupta. And finally, this work has been funded by the National Science Foundation and the Google Corporation. So thanks so much for your time, and I'm hoping to be able to answer questions at the end of the session.
Thank you, Florence, and connecting us to a computational thinking task using the a game-based environment. Okay, our next speaker panelist is Morris. Morris, please share. Yeah.
Can you see my screen?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Professor Kong, for introducing me. I'm Morris Strong from the Chinese University of Hong Kong. And actually, the talk I'm going to deliver today is echoing the talk that I'm just delivered in 2020 in ICCE. In that talk, I call for more. I solicit researchers to do more research on teacher side research on STEM education rather than just solely on the student side research. The title of my presentation today is Territory-wide Studies on Hong Kong Teachers' Concerns about STEM Education. And which is the focus is measuring Hong Kong teacher concerns about STEM education, and which is support from the Hong Kong government, and which is actually a joint university project, including from the Chinese University, from the Education University of Hong Kong, as well as the University of Hong Kong, Three University. So before I go into detail of the research, I would like to talk about some background about teacher concern, why it is important to measure teacher concerns about education innovation, specifically in this context, we're talking about STEM education and how to measure it. According to Fulan, which is a very who is a very famous contemporary educator in e-learning or in curriculum design. He argued that teacher is is always the innovation gatekeeper at school, and many educational innovation, which is good, over the past few decades were not adopted or even sustained finally because teacher concerns about those innovations were not properly addressed. When we're talking about teacher concern, we can divide into two categories. One is namely called demoting concerns, which is more negative. And the other part is promoting concern, which is belong to positive concerns. If demoting concerns keeping ranging for a period of time, teachers will discuss this innovation sooner or later, no matter how promoting it is, according to theory. And however, for promoting concerns, which can promote the teachers to continue adoption and usage of this innovation. So I think our team, at least our team, think that it's very important to measure this concern, especially in the STEM education context. So the rationale behind our study is to we regard that STEM education is one of very important initiative over the world, right? And we want to understand teacher concerns about STEM education. And more importantly, we would like to propose and offer articulated interventions to address their concerns, either demoting concern or promoting concern. So in this study, we adopt a theoretical framework called state of concern, which is I think which is a very famous one. And in fact, this theoretical framework have been adopted in Hong Kong for some years already. Personally, I adopted this instrument before to measure teacher concern about digital game-based learning, mobile learning, flipped classroom, as well as gamification, educational gamification. And according to this framework, the whole framework composed of five dimensions, namely evaluations, information management, and consequence, as well as refocusing. The first one is talking about the evaluation, which is about the teacher concerns about the value of introducing this educational innovation into his schools. The other concerns, second level, we're talking about the information. It is about the concerns that the teachers worry about the pedagogic roles and tasks involving in this educational innovation, as well as the availabilities of the relevant supports and resources. The third one is management. Teachers' concerns about the tasks and process involved in implementing this educational innovation, focusing on the organizing, managing, and scheduling matters. And the fourth one is consequent concerns. It is about the influence of these educational innovations on teachers' learning, as well as his own professional developments. The last one is refocusing. It is about they concerned about the future's development of these educational innovations and how to enhance its existing pedagogical use. And according to the theory, the first three stages, namely evaluation, information, and management, are categorized as demoting concerns, while the refocusing and consequent concerns are categorized as promoting concerns. So actually, as an educational, STEM facilitator, we have to address these two kinds of concerns from teachers. And this is a pieces of our previous work. In 2090s, we developed an instrument and validate it for measuring teacher concerns in a quantitative way. We name it as Teacher's Concerns, Teacher State of Concern Questionnaire on STEM Education with 19 items. And if you want to know more about this instrument, you can refer to our previous publications in TAPA in 2019. And let's talk about the research design of these studies. And we adopt in this study, we adopt a mixed research methods, including Concom primary as well as secondary teachers on a voluntary basis. And the data collections, we adopt an online surveys approach, which composed of 3 parts, including 90 SOC items of STEM education that I just mentioned before in our previous publication. And the 3 open-end questions for gathering specific concerns about STEM education to be spelled out by the teachers. And 11 demographic dependent independent variables items, things like that. And the sample, we got 370 teachers responded to the survey, and 331 were valid response. And we collect the data from different districts in Hong Kong. And the results, due to the time limitation, I can only give a very brief description about the findings. So firstly, it's about the qualitative findings regarding our 90 items from a 5-point scale perspective. According to the result, you can see that all teachers have very high concerns across the 5 dimensions, including from the evaluations to the refocusings. They're all over 4 from a 5-point scale perspective. They're all significant. When we are comparing the differences between the primary as well as the secondary teachers, they all they share the same very similar results. For example, you can see that from the overall perspective, management as the information as well as consequence are most concerns from the teachers. When we divide into 2 categories like the primaries as well as secondary teachers, we can see the very similar results. You can see that information as well as the consequence still the most big concern from the teachers. And according to the coding results of the open-end questions, we got 371 narrative. And we can, after the coding as clarification, we found that there are 49 narrative belong to evaluations contributing to 30%. 74% belong to information, 22% belong to management concerns, and 12% belong to consequence concerns. And last but not least, 6% belong to refocusing concerns. And according to the qualitative data, we can we have a number of subcategories. Maybe we can start with the demoting concerns first. Let's start with the evaluation one. We got 30%, right? We can divide it. There's 2 additional subcategories, namely the possibility of STEM education and the wealth of STEM education. Regarding the second dimension, information 37%. We can have 2 more. We have 2 more categories, namely available of supports and resources, and the pedagogical tasks belong to the STEM education. Belonging to the management concerns, we have 4 subcategories, and namely instructional activities, class time, workload, and manpower. Regarding the promoting concerns, we got 2 dimension, namely consequence as well as focusing. Regarding consequence, we got 3 subcategories, namely impact on students, general impacts as well as impacts on teachers. Last but not least, the refocusings. We have 2 subcategories, namely further development of STEM education and ways to improve STEM education. So I would like to highlight some implications after we did this research. The first one is we as STEM education facilitator, we should assist teachers in better understanding the value of STEM education, that is to enabling real-world problems to be conducted with STEM education. And in the study, we observed that teachers questions the value of teaching STEM very much, and they were unsure about the efficacy of increasing students' learning interest and performance. That's, I think, our as education facilitator, especially in STEM education, we have to address this this aspect. Regarding the second implications, we believe that as STEM facilitators, we should better support teachers in designing and implementing instructional strategies for STEM education. That is to translate relevance theory into practice. In the research, we observed that instructional support, which remains one of the major teacher concerns, which is deemed that to be an efficient, effective means for adjusting teacher concerns about STEM education and their professional learning needs. And the third one is as STEM facilitators, we should collaborate with the government and together with the frontline teachers to co-develop adequate STEM curricula as well as the corresponding teaching and learning and assessment resources. According to research, we observed that teachers were highly concerned about the curriculum support. They have a very different interpretation about STEM education, causing big problems about the STEM curriculum development in their own schools. So, actually, the full report is coming soon. So, if you are interested in our report or our research, I can send you a copy later on. So, before the end of my presentation, I would like to add two remarks. The first one is many promising educational initiatives cannot be sustained because of the absence of articulate observations of teachers' concerns about the initiative and the proper intervention for resolving their concerns. And we hope that our work can alert the related stakeholders to the importance of observing and adjusting teacher concerns when they are introducing different STEM initiatives into K-12 education. Thank you. This is the end of my presentation.
Thank you, Morris, for a very comprehensive report about the concern of the teachers, both primary and secondary, on STEM education. Our next panelist is from Tingjia. Tingjia, please.
Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, hello everyone. My name is Tingjia Xu. I'm currently the professor in the Department of Technology Application and Human Resource Development in National Taiwan Normal University. It's my great honor to have the opportunity to introduce our computational thinking and the STEM curriculum here. I would like to share two instructional tools and the learning material we developed in Taiwan. One is called AI to Robocity, and the other one is named RobotFly. The development and the design of the instructional tools are in line with the constructivism learning theory. Students complete meaningful tasks through hands-on work. And at the beginning, I would like to talk about two things which we concerned. One is the increasing interest that teachers bring making activities into K-12 education. The other is what can these activities bring to our students, like the integration and the connection of what students learned. The instructional tool of AI to Robocity combines AI applications, computational thinking, and the cross-disciplinary integration. AI to Robocity was recognized by the 2020 Future Tech Award in Taiwan. It was also cited in the dissertation of Dr. Natalie Liao in the Department of Electronic Engineering and Information Science at MIT in 2020. Speaking of K-12 technology education and the application of AI, we need to transform the complex academic foundation of computer science in the university into teaching materials and the new teaching tools, which provide students of younger ages with the innovative learning approaches. In order to facilitate domestic and the foreign elementary and the middle school students to obtain the development board, we apply the most popular British development board named Microbit. This development board is suitable for elementary and the middle school students to get started. It can be connected to the mobile phone application with Bluetooth and receive the control signals sent by the mobile apps. This interdisciplinary AI instructional tool applies game-based learning so that the student can experience the mobile application of image recognition through the use of this instructional tool without the need of understanding the complex mathematics of computer science. This product combines the board game with the creation of smart cards, carries out computational thinking competition on the board game. A completed app is already set on Google Play in the Android mobile system, where users can download and install it directly. Users will experience the board game first and then design their own mobile application with MIT App Inventor by themselves. By playing the game, students need to go through the process of maker by using the related electromechanical components shown in the slide and create 2 smart cards with tracking function. The instructional tools allow students to draw board game cards by themselves. So here is the board game card the student draw by themselves, and then train the image recognition model and achieve the experience and the purpose of learning AI. The students build the image recognition model by themselves on the personal image classifier platform from MIT App Inventor. Then the students can download their own model and embed it into the mobile application. When students create the smart cards and write the smartphone application, they can return to the computational thinking education board game. Through the game, students can experience the important logical thinking and the problem-solving process. The second one curriculum is named RobotFly. It asks the students to create a quadcopter with the laser cutting wood models and the Arduino Nano combo board. The RobotFly is designed to encourage students' potential creativity. We encourage students to extend their creativity. We also expect that the RobotFly can help carry out STEAM. After the RobotFly activities, students are expected to understand basic concepts and the critical factors of the quadcopter and the computational thinking. For example, students should learn how to create the body of RobotFly so they understand the key elements of a quadcopter. Then they have to apply block-based programming to control the RobotFly and the solve flight tasks assigned. Furthermore, the students are encouraged to design their own fuselage of the quadcopters with the help of computer-free software, such as Inkscape and the laser cutting machine. We first collected the research data from the RobotFly Maker Camp in 2018. The youngest of them is 10 years old, and the oldest is 18 years old. The following is the main idea of RobotFly. We do not allow the students to stop at the imitating stage, like cooking according to the cookbook. Therefore, the students do not just assemble the body of RobotFly, but to make it by themselves. Every detail has its meaning, such as the control of the total weight. The students learn from entertainment to experiment. The instructional tool also contains a textbook, which contains 9 chapters for the students to spend 18 periods on learning RobotFly. Here is the design of the instructional progress. Due to the time limitation, I will not introduce each period in detail. We first provide students opportunities to process small-scale experiments and to present their thoughts after group discussion. So students construct basic knowledge about physics and the electromechanics. Then the electromechanics. Then students started their first creation of RobotFly and spent some time practicing controlling the RobotFly with corresponding app. The students use block-based programming to solve the assigned flight task of RobotFly. After the process of redesign, the students are encouraged to design their own fuselage of the basic knowledge they have learned. with the basic knowledge they have learned. Many robot fry with diverse appearance were produced at this process. Finally, we held a simple competition of fly to give students opportunity to appreciate the superb skills of others. The students discussed related science knowledge which is possible required for the application of a quadcopter. The student applied a technology tool to help them to learn some experiments. They also use broad-based programming to control the action of the robot fly. The student learned to use computer software to draw their own robot fly body before sending their image file to the laser cutting machine. And the student have to design their own appearance of the robot fly. As a result, a lot of different appearance of quadcopters were produced. You can see so many different styles. And they have to try and error. Whether all of them can fly, they have to do the experiment. Of course, the student have to apply mathematics in the making process of robot fly so as to successfully make their quadcopters fly. The increase of students' creative self-efficacy may come from the experiments of designing their own fuselage. Once they were appropriately guided, they gain confidence to finish their task. The younger students show their creativity most in coloring and decorating the fuselage of the quadcopter. The elder students extended their creativity in shape. Also, we noticed that the designing factors like balance and the symmetry are considered in the students' design. The increase of students' learning effectiveness may due to the use of learning strategies like discussion, quick answer, presentation, and scoring. Students brainstorm, think, express, review, and discuss with each other again and again in the camp. We have conducted several teacher training workshops. We also represented National Taiwan Normal University team to participate in the educational technology exhibition in December in 2020. So here is a video, but I think I do not have enough time to display the video, but I can share the video on YouTube so you can see the demonstration of robot fly and AI to robot city. Thank you.
Thank you, Tinja, for the STEM activities related to the robot. And now we have Timothy to share with us.
Okay, can you hear me? Yeah. Thank you, Professor Kong, and
Wait a minute,
for the invitation.
Tinja, I cannot see the sharing of Timothy.
Oh, right.
Yeah. Tinja, have you off the sharing?
Share the screen first.
It's waiting for Tinja to stop sharing. Okay,
Right.
Timothy. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, thank you, Professor Kong, and to APSCE for the invitation. I'm not sharing my screen, but I've got the slides behind me. So I've spotlighted this video. So if you just put it on speaker view, you should be able to see everything. Okay, so what I'll be sharing on basically is some of the work that I've been working on and some ongoing work as well. That is, and I'm talking broadly in terms of curriculum design and curriculum integration in this area of STEM and computational thinking. So just very broadly, obviously the Singapore education system may not be familiar to everyone, but we do have some STEM education incorporated within primary and secondary, within K-12, but not formalized across all areas. And a lot of this is still undergoing change. So we actually have upcoming reorganization of the secondary school. In fact, it's ongoing right now, curriculum such that there's subject-based banding, and eventually moving away from the separation from the O level, N level, and so on to just one unified secondary education certificate. Within that system, for STEM education, we have specialized schools for STEM education, but for the vast majority of our schools, we actually have the option to schools to specialize in having enrichment programs that fall under this umbrella of an applied learning program. And within an applied learning program, schools have the option to pick up and develop STEM-based applied learning programs. There are many other kinds of ALPs, drama, and things that in any a variety of subject areas, but STEM is one of the popular ones. And in assisting that, usually we have commercial vendors as well as the Singapore Science Centre, which has its own branch that specializes in helping schools do this. To encourage all of this, we have very frequent and a lot of diverse STEM competitions, and students get to do a lot of STEM research. So some of the work that I'm interested in doing is actually providing alternative venues to support the idea of the STEM ALP, and or even if the school doesn't want to take it formally as a whole program, that they have these options for developing STEM integration into their curriculum. So just very quickly, the applied learning program is very broad, and there are many kinds. And even within the STEM ALPs, there are quite a wide variety, as you can just see just above me here. So that's just a broad context. And so within this framework, within this what we do, I'm particularly interested in using something called the microbial fuel cell. So the microbial fuel cell, or MFCs, are basically a very interesting device because it requires all three sciences, biology, chemistry, and physics, the three natural sciences that are normally taught in Singapore schools, and an integrated interdisciplinary understanding of the concepts, because it involves respiration, redox chemistry, electrochemistry, and of course this idea of electrical circuits and so on, in order to understand how it functions and to make use of it. It is also usually very exciting for students because involves this concept of alternative energy sources and speaks to environmental issues. So it's a very engaging topic for most students. So what I normally do with this and have been working on for some years with a handful of schools is that we use a curriculum program where it's typically about 10 weeks of curriculum time and the somewhere around 2 hours per week. And typically this would be in the afternoon time slot, either after school or the very end of the school day. And what we would normally do is what most schools would do is that they would form composite classes of their high ability students, or sometimes the top class within their school for that means high ability science students. So what this is very broadly involving the use of learning about microbial fuel cell, and then using the microbial fuel cell as a test bed, right, to try out the effect of different parameters, such as varying the sugar type of sugar used, the amount of sugar used, the concentration of different reagents, electron mediator, oxidizing agents, so on and so forth, that make MSc work. And so that students understand, and they're put in a position of student scientists to try to find out what these parameters do and how they affect the voltage output. So the thing that's easily measured from a microbial fuel cell is the voltage output. And so when you change the components of the MFC, you get varying voltages. And so we start with a not very well optimized MFC, and students try to find combinations of reactants in order to boost that voltage. And they are usually put in groups, working in groups, and they are given a challenge to eventually build their own microbial fuel cell, design and build their own microbial fuel cell, and placed in a sort of a competition, right? The challenge: who can produce the highest voltage? Who can produce the microbial fuel cell that can last the longest above a certain voltage? that can contain that has sustained function. So in that context, we get a lot of students building micro fuel cells such as this. They don't look like much, but they can be quite impressive in terms of, for grade 9 students to put together working fuel cells that actually actually have substantially higher voltage than the reference teaching kit fuel cell that they are initially exposed to. So that's the STEM integration, and broadly this idea of how we can bring design-based inquiry into and STEM integration together. Extending on that work, my interests also then go into this idea that involves computational thinking. And because we have this Smart Nation drive, the use of computational thinking or the application of computational thinking and ICT in education is ever growing, obviously. And we have various curriculum frameworks that guide all of these things. And again, this is just broad context to the idea where what I'm extending on this work is really that we typically would have to use a data logger, which collects this data. And it is part of our science curriculum to expose students to data loggers and make them use this so that they have sets of data to collect and then analyze, right? So the intention here is to focus less on the observational aspects of science practicals as classically we would do, and more on the analysis part of this. So to that, what I've been working on is using the microbit here as a microcontroller, sets of microbits in order to act as an internet connected data logger, uploading data to the cloud. And we then have dashboard information such as this, where the data is collected. Now, it's real world data that very often can be the case. It can be applied to the micro fuel cell experiments, as I mentioned earlier. But actually more exciting is the fact that many sensors out there are readily available, cheaply available. You can buy them off the net for a few dollars each at the most. And they measure all kinds of scientific phenomena and parameters, oxygen level, pH, things, conductivity, whatever it is. So the great thing about developing something like this is that it goes beyond the science practical, goes beyond the classroom, and goes beyond the lesson period. In other words, data collection can occur 24/7, 365 days a year, and at any point, students can come in, download data, and analyze it. And we want to focus on the analysis. Where this is relevant for this audience, perhaps, is that part of my interest in STEM integration is to ensure that students are involved in the designing and building of their own scientific instruments. In other words, using the microbit controller as a central hub, select their sensors, put it together, and then engage in very basic, very simple coding to make these scientific instruments work. And so basically, this is my ongoing work. And really, if there's, I covered this very briefly and very broadly, but if there's any interest, feel free to contact me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Timothy, for sharing about the STEM activities that you are designing in Singapore. Okay, I'm the last one, and then we'll open it up for open discussion. So I'm going to share with you about the case of promoting STEM education in Hong Kong. And Morris talked about the concern from the teachers. And my concern is how to promote STEM education. And one way is to integrate STEM education into subject teaching. So today I'm going to share with you about why we have to promote STEM education. And it's because, as Timothy has just mentioned, he's using about a microbit. And we are talking about, because of the fourth industrial revolution, STEM education is one of the core. And STEM education is for human capital building. And another characteristic of STEM education, different from programming CT, is because of the physical setting for the and the human reality that we need the STEM activities. So actually, STEM activities should be supporting the human beings to have a better live and try to automate as much as they can. So because of the fourth industrial revolution and everything go to digitalization, and STEM per se is for human capital building. So we need STEM per se education. And the core is to build the ability of the students and digital creativity. So we need some pedagogical design to make this happen. So our STEM is this actually is about talking about STEM per se. So the core of the STEM is the computing, the microprocessor, that is the core. And then surrounding that is the STEM activities that we have to engage with the students. So the IoT is the core actually, because it will be, everything will be connected. And so the STEM, we focus on how to make use of the IoT concept. So another core concept of IoT in behind is the sensing, reasoning, and reacting. So we want to groom the primary school students have the STEM concept of sensing, reasoning, and reacting together with the cloud computing. So in what sense we are going to talk about the ability? It is about the problem solving ability. So when we talk about the STEM practices, it is about the engineering system concept. It is about from mathematics, it's not just calculation. It is about the mathematical thinking. It is about conditional reasoning, sequencing. For science, it is about conditional reasoning and causal reasoning. That is the core. And technology is about also related to engineering, system thinking, and sequencing. So actually, we want to also highlight the design thinking element, especially for the empathize, define, and so on. So how to do this? We promote our pedagogy is to play, to think, to STEM, to cook, to reflect, and to create. Why? This is a pedagogy borrowed from the 5E. The 5E is about engage, explain, explore, evaluate, and extend. But in terms of STEM education, we usually we want the students to STEM. That is that they make things and create things. But we, from the pedagogical perspective, not just try and error. We better let them have some experience of some existing STEM activities, artifacts to play around with them. And then they have to think about why it works. Why it works means they have to explore from the science perspective, from the mathematics perspective, from the engineering perspective. Okay, it worked. Okay, then we have give an opportunity for the students to build it up by themselves. Okay, they know this can work, but how to build it is another matter. So they have to STEM. And then they, as Timothy talked about, there's some basic coding they have to work with. Okay, they have to do some coding to make the reasoning work. So finally, they have to make reflection on what they have learned. So what is in behind is sensing, reasoning, and reacting. And because the cloud technology, everything can be remote control. So they have to learn a concept. And then finally, we provide them some basic tools, just like Tingjia with some robots for flying. And they have a lot of creativity they can develop. So this is the pedagogy that we promote. So actually, for STEM education is to provide opportunity for students to solve STEM problems, develop STEM CT. So and then attempt to formulate STEM problems. That's the creativity. So actually, the goal is to develop their mindset and ability, and have the ability to conduct STEM design. So this is the we provide a framework. So the framework is a borrow from Burnett and Redstick. So Burnett and Redstick in 2012 is talking about programming CT. They're focusing on programming, on Scratch programming, or App Inventor programming. But actually for STEM, we have another set of computational thinking here. The concept we call is the STEM concept. It's about sensing, reasoning, and reacting. It is about the IoT because of the connectivity through the cloud. And then the practices are causal reasoning, sequencing, conditional reasoning, engineering, system thinking. We need to develop this kind of practices in the STEM activities. And of course, they need to develop the perspective of using STEM, building robots, like forums, is engaging with them in the game, connecting them to their daily life and connect to the digital world, and they feel empowered and they formulate identity. So this is our proposed STEM CT framework. So how to put this up into a subject? So we don't want to have very few time in engaging students about STEM activities. So we better put it up into the subject. In Hong Kong, it is in primary, it's about general studies. So we introduce microbit. The everyday life is that they have to encounter the traffic light, the pedestrian traffic lights. The point is, can they build build by themselves? Yes, through the microbit and with some very cheap connection using the paper connector. Is made of copper and made of some LED, and they make use of the microbit. Then they can do some programming. They can connect what they are doing. They can see in their daily life, and now they build up by themselves, and they learn in primary about open circuitry and closed circuitry. You can see here there is a closed circuitry already, right? Because there is a ground connection and then LED, and then this is the closed circuit, and this is another closed circuit for the green light, right? So through these activities, we are teaching the subject content, but at the same time, they have to build it by themselves. So this is a STEM activities. So of course, we try to let them to play first, and then they have to think about why it works. Because there are some science or knowledge in behind about circuitry, and then they have to do some simple coding, and then they have to make it up, and finally they have to create their own design. Why? Because we want to engage them to think about if you walk along to a pedestrian traffic light, can it automatically detect your presence and try to switch the light from red to green? Of course, you have to provide them the components, the sensor, and then they have to figure it out. So our STEM practices for sequencing is already incorporated in the learning process. Why it is here? Now, for example, when they build the connection, we ask them to off the battery first before they make the connection, because this is to prevent electric shock. So you better off the battery and then you make the connection, and then after that you make the connection already, then okay, you can on the battery so that see whether it can work or not. So this is a kind of sequencing concept that you have to avoid in danger. So this is about electric shock. Okay, so they have other things to do the coding. The coding are simple, as Timothy said. It's not too much coding here, but coding is the foundation for conditional reasoning. So they have to do some simple coding so that they can control the traffic light when it can change from red to green, and how to trigger this event. So these are the coding event. This is a countdown in Japan. You like the traffic light, they usually have the countdown 5, 4, 3. Then you have to do the coding to make it happen. So they find that, okay, this is not that difficult for me to understand in daily life. What I'm seeing actually is some STEM activities that I can manage, and I understand what is happening surrounding me. So these are the move forward indicator. This is you cannot move forward. So okay, all these activities because of the microbit, there is a light sensor. So we can make use of the light sensor for conditional reasoning. So if the surrounding is very bright, so then you have to make the light stronger so that they can see the red light. But if it is in the surrounding is not so bright, then you can have a not so strong indication of the red light. So this is for conditional reasoning. The reasoning is in behind is sensing. You know the light sensitivity, then you have to make the decision, and then the reaction is how to make the signal in different form. And they also make use of this reasoning for causal reasoning. So I think I still have time to indicate how to show the teaching of conditional reasoning here. So this is an example of for talking about conditional reasoning. So this is a built by the students themselves, okay? And then it is in Cantonese, so I have to speak in English. That after they connect it, they find the it doesn't work. Then they have to find out the reason why it doesn't work. Why it doesn't the light doesn't light up.
STEM CT 實踐因
So
果推
they have
論
to do the causal reasoning. So they have to check
檢查編碼是否
whether the
正常
programming part
運
is
作
correct.
檢查電源供應
The
是否
battery,
正常
is it the battery working?
檢查鱷魚夾線同埋 microbit 或者銅箔膠紙嘅連接
Is
位
the
置是否
connectivity
有鬆
properly
脫現
connected?
象檢查銅箔膠紙與電路元件
Because of
嘅
the
連接位
paper
置是否有鬆脫
conductor
現象
may not be so connected well. So they have to try it
揾
out.
到問題嘅成因之後，你可以點樣解決佢呢？
And then they have to sort it out and resolve the problem that they encounter. So actually, this is a kind of activities that we expect. Causal reasoning is a kind of teaching opportunities for teachers to let them find out the problem, not to be resolved by the teachers or the other, but they have to work together. So they need the engineering system thinking, because everything should be connected properly, then it can work. If it's not properly, it does not work. So this system concept is a engineering system concept, not very deep, but they have to understand everything connected is needed, but everything properly connected is another thing that it make everything work together. Then this is a system concept. So actually, we also are through this process that students have the sensing, reasoning, and reacting concept because of the sensor of the microbit, and then they have the programming, and then they make the reaction. So we have designed all the worksheet, and because as Boris has talked about, teachers a lot of concern on how to carry out, because this is a new concept of teaching. It's not easy. So we have to develop a comprehensive set of worksheets so that directly they understand what they are delivering for STEM CT concept and practices. Then they need the support of colorful teaching and learning materials to be delivered to the students so that they can fill in all the gaps and then they learn in the process. So this is not an easy task, but anyway, we have rolled this out already to the primary schools in Hong Kong. In the first year, there are 3 primary schools working with this, and they have very good feedback. And this year, up to now, we have another 7 schools joining us, so that we are trying to make this happen to be promoting STEM in the subject teaching in Hong Kong. So the core is to promote CT and design thinking. Of course, finally, is about problem solver and a digital creator in a digital era. So this is what we're trying to do in Hong Kong. I think all the panelists now have made the presentation from different perspectives. I think we can open this up to answer some questions from the chat room. So we have one. See what are the questions asking. So we welcome questions from the participant or by the panelists within us as well. Florence, actually, when I'm presenting the framework, actually, we are also studying your literature on the STEM practices, actually.
It's great to hear. Yeah, I saw some of that in your presentation. I'm pretty excited about what you guys are doing.
Yeah.
So really like
we are borrowing the framework from Bernard Reste, but actually also from your past work on STEM practices.
Yeah, I thought I really like the activity of creating the stoplight and using the copper.
Yeah, the paper copper.
The paper copper, yeah, that's very nice.
Yeah.
I've used that before to do the little LED lights, yeah.
So during the pandemic, actually, they work this out at home. Every individual, we prepare one set for them, and they make the connection at home, individual, through the Zoom. So although Zoom is not a very good way of connecting students, but in terms of STEM activities, we use more than one camera in Zoom, so we can show the PowerPoint, but at the same time we demonstrate how the hands-on work can show clearly through the demonstration, and the students can work at this using the package and work it out at home. So, Tinja, can you let us enlighten us about the competition? Because I think you have a package so that people can buy the package and then the students can write on the package and work more, right?
Yes, I want to explain why no cookbook. Maybe I should share my screen first. What do I mean about no cookbook? Because if all the students imitate what the teacher do, they draw the same blocks to solve the problem, but they will not understand what happened among, I mean the logic part. So if they only imitate or copy what their teacher do, they will make the same robot. They will not have different appearance, different structure. But we don't want our students only follow the steps, although they start from imitating. If after they have the successful experience, we hope the teachers ask the students to change parameters or some different designs for their product. So this is the better result if the students can think about the process and know about the science knowledge and the application of the technology, then they can use their interdisciplinary knowledge to create different creation. That is the reason why I say we don't want our students to just cook according to cookbook. So yeah. I think I answered the second one question. As for the other one question, I have typed the answer in the screen. So yeah, the first one asked me about what is constructivism or constructionist learning. Because I was a visiting scholar in MIT APP Inventor last year, so most of MIT APP Inventor and the Scratch are based on Professor Popper's theory. A lot is learning by making. So we use blocks to represent our logic, our logical thinking. And the student have to make tangible objects in the real world. So that is the first question. The second one, cookbook, I think is the most important because our teachers have to change the instructional approach. Otherwise, all of our students have 100 perfect score, but they don't understand what happened because they only copy our blocks. Then they have the same result, just like the previous screen. And they got 100 perfect score if they have this product. However, we don't want them to do so. So we can see the result of robot fry. A lot of students have different appearance after the class. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Tinja, for the answer. There is another question is about the goal of STEM CT. What is the goal? Is it the STEM or computational thinking? I think some of you may be confused with the general terms of computational thinking. In general, when we talk about computational thinking, we refer to Burnett and Resnick on the CT concept, programming concept, programming practices, and perspective. But actually, now we are defining another set of CT that is about STEM, because STEM is about physical activities in building up something so they can work physically. Together in behind is the computer, of course. So that's why for our STEM, we are developing the problem-solving ability. So programming, you solve problem by programming to solve problem. STEM here is by building up some systems to solve some human being interested problem. So actually, when we are talking about STEM CT, I think it's a little bit different from the programming CT. So actually, when we're talking about artificial intelligence, it also involves computational thinking, but actually you have to elaborate that more in depth because they focus more on data and interaction. So I think CT is not just one single concept. It depends on in what context when you are talking about computational thinking, because there are an array of activities you want our next generation to have. But of course, the final thing, the goal is simple. It's problem solving. Is to be a creator. So that is the final goal for no matter what CT you are considering. I think Morris can say something about your concern about the teachers, right?
Yeah,
so if you find out something about a concern, how we all these panelists are doing some STEM activities, what concern we should support the teachers more so that they can resolve their the difficulties that they encounter.
I think, first of all, thank you for your question, Professor Kong. So actually, I think it's very important to provide articulate professional development training for our teachers. I'm not sure in other countries, but in Hong Kong, in fact, most of teachers, I would say, especially in primary school teachers, they are not graduate from engineering or even not from computer sciences. They're actually maybe from English or maybe in general some history subject. They are not from engineering. So they feel a lot of pressure when the government or the educational education initiative in STEM education. They have to help in implement this kind of initiative into their school. They feel a lot of pressure. So as I would say that as a STEM facilitator of STEM education facilitator, we have to provide more articulate training, professional development or capacity building for our teachers. Especially from three perspectives, I think learning resources, right? And also the assessment resources, because most of teachers don't know how to do the assessment, especially for STEM education, because as we say that STEM education is not for every student to get 100 marks, right? As Ting Jia just mentioned about. We have to let our students know the process of problem solving, right? And how to do the assessment is very important, and how to give the feedback for the teacher or the student is very important, I think. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Morris. And Florence, you have one question from the participant is about the funding. Can you share more about the funding on STEM education related fundings?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So funds of knowledge, there's a couple of really interesting early research studies on funds of knowledge that you could find. One was done, I think, in 1974 by Michael Cole. It focused on Capel rice farmers on the continent of Africa. And the funds of knowledge there is related to estimating how much rice was in a particular a jar or bag, etc. And the idea there was that this sort of knowledge of how much rice was in the bag was part of the daily activities of the Capel rice farmers. So they were very strongly able to estimate correctly, whereas people who were not involved in that activity obviously did not have that sort of capability. Another really kind of key study was done by Coherent and Coherent in Brazil in 1986. And what they were looking at was Brazilian street children, so children who lived on the street in Brazil and did not have formal education, and how they were able to do mathematics related to making change for the candy that they were selling or the small products that they were selling on the street. So these are sort of, initial sort of early studies. And then of course, there's the work done by Lewis Mall. But the idea here is that there's another really great text to look at is Cognition and Practice by Jean Lave, which was written in like 1989, I believe. The idea underlying all of this work is that there are a lot of things that people know but we can't get at it by our traditional assessment methods. We have to be smart in understanding what it is that people know and can do, and we have to connect to their ways of knowing. And in particular, for communities of people who are not in the dominant society. So there's actually probably several funds of knowledge articles that you could find starting from the 1990s on that are related to math and science. Yeah, but those are the early ones. I hope that helps.
Okay, thank you, Forrest.
Could I make one more comment also about the question that was asked of you?
Yeah.
So Chung, the question about computational thinking and STEM. I was thinking, I just wanted to add the comment that, Jeanette Wing, in her article in 2006, she really positioned computational thinking as the fourth pillar in science. It's sort of the idea that technology and science co-evolve. So as we develop new technologies, and we can understand and look at new concepts, right? We can understand more things about the natural world. And as we understand more things about the natural world, we develop new technologies to take us further. So these things co-evolve. There's really no pulling them apart. So computational thinking is really sort of, when you're doing anything with technology, it's foundational. And we really don't do science without technology anymore. Somebody could take me on with that. Maybe Timothy could disabuse me of that notion, but I think there's a really strong connection there. They're very tied together. You don't really try to pull them apart, but understand how they're working together.
Okay, that is this is a very good comment, and we have to think deep about the connection between the technology and the science, or the foundation of all the related knowledge. Okay, thank you, Forrest. Timothy, can you help us to round up what we have today for the panel? I think you have heard all many comments and discussions. Can you, from your perspective, to see about what you supposed to say something about this panel? We can't hear you. You try? We can hear now, I think, right? There's some noise. You can try? Speed up. Oh, no, not yet. We cannot hear. So, Farm, can you also check the connection? It's trying. Yeah. Yeah, try again. Is it okay? Still, we cannot hear. Okay.
Can you hear me?
Now, yes. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry.
Okay. Yes, please.
Goodness, I'm not sure what happened there, but I just tried changing things.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Right. So it's really interesting for me as well, hearing all the panelists today. And obviously, I think Prof. Shi and Prof. Kong, a lot of, because we talked a lot about microbits, that's the easiest point of comparison is that we're all very interested in this idea that we get students to be able to make and create, right? So that's the constructionist approach, I think, as Prof. Shi mentioned, is I think we all, something we can see common ground there, and I think that's a really powerful way to engage students and so on. And of course, being from Singapore's National Institute of Education, I also see the things that Professor Zhang talked about, Morris, when you talked about teacher professional development and so on. I think those also definitely resonate with me, because those are much of us the same concerns. So things like that, I think well, I don't know. I don't know what else to say about rounding up, but I mean, I definitely get that strong sense that we are all very much, I guess you like, in this together. We have been talking about many of the same things, and that I think it's an exciting time because if we want to talk about technology and STEM, and actually, Florence, I think you challenged me to disabuse you of the notion. I can't, because I completely agree with you with this absolutely fundamental foundational aspect of technology and STEM. And that's why I'm very interested in this idea that we cannot actually separate these things, that we shouldn't actually, starting with individual disciplines, we shouldn't break science down by disciplines. We should take a much more holistic approach to science. And because technology and engineering are all, and even mathematics are also intrinsically tied into what we are, this whole concept of science education, the traditional idea of science education as the the main topic behind the main subject area. I think we're just really all talking and very much in focused in the same area. We're all quite very much in agreement that all of this should really be integrated. It should be approached quite liberally. I think I don't know if that's the right word, that we can take a diversity of approaches, that we can expose students to more than what is conventional, and accept what students, I think, come back with, or what learners, their diverse backgrounds, their diverse ideas, and so on, and be, I guess, ready to accept, coming from I think, for instance, your standpoint, that we have to be able to take in what may not necessarily be mainstream or considered mainstream, but that students, learners from whatever diverse cultural background that they have, perhaps we can really open up knowledge and open up learning by being open to begin with, right? Accepting all of these views. I don't know if I'm making a lot of sense. I'm trying to process it myself right now.
Thank you, Timothy. And I think I have to bring the closing of this panel, because we have shared from different regions about what we are doing, actually, about problem solving and to be creativity. And actually, we have some in-depth discussion about the what we are doing about STEM education, what should be the core, and how to move forward. So I think this is only one of the APSCE webinar. May I hand this over to Nong Xiang to talk about the next webinar to be delivered? Nong Xiang, are you going to share some our next work?
Okay, it happened that I'm using another machine without that. So I wonder whether, Alex, do you have that PowerPoint slide which you can share? Yeah. So I'd like to invite all of you to our next webinar, Learning by Holding a Conversation with Computer Agents, by Professor Art Grazer. We're welcome to have our free registration again, which is due 12 April. There's still quite a bit of time from now, actually exactly 1 month away. The Greenwich Mean Time is 1 a.m. to 2 a.m., but this is Greenwich Mean Time. So we hope that you can join us, but there'll be something around about 9 a.m. or so, 8 to 10 a.m. around that at our Asia Pacific part, and also late evening in American. Yeah, we'll hope to see you on our next webinar. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you, Lawrence. Bye-bye.
Nice
Good
to see
evening.
you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Nice to meet you, Timothy.
Nice to meet you too.